Okay, now I put everybody on screen. Oh, well, okay. Hey, everybody. Lots of technical difficulties. First night again. Kenny's probably sitting there laughing his butt off because he's a professional at this. So how is everybody doing who's in the chat? Welcome to Bedtime Stories. We got Roger's in the house. Hello, Cairo. Everybody else let's see who else has been sliding in that I haven't seen. Barb's here. Hi, Barb. Of course, we're streaming. Grizzly's in here. Obviously, he's the one that's saving my butt right now as far as being controls from the back. Looks like he's eating a little bowl of ice cream, though. Enjoying it. Mr. Kenny.
It's soup, not ice cream.
Oh, okay. So he is still on the Planet Fitness plan for weight loss. Good for him. Kenny, my friend, I don't want to butcher your last name, but from Star Fox Media, and you and I do a little thing on Sunday nights, Midnight Lycanthropy. How about you introduce yourself, since I got to go through all this last night?
Brian, my dude, what is going on? Thanks for linking up with me, and thanks, Grizzly, for tracking me down and plugging me into what's going on. And Barb, it's always great to see you here. I was just chatting with you, I believe, 5-10 minutes ago, maybe, give or take. So long story short, it's not a butchering of the last name. A lot of people say it different, but I am a Frenchie, so it's Thibodeau, Kenneth Thibodeau, but I go by Star Fox. So long story short, man, is I'm a journalist. I cover missing people with the North American Dogman Project that ranges from cave systems to national forests. And I also cover potentially unknown or prehistoric species that are still existing. Also unknown and prehistoric animals that could still be existing.
And you're pretty science-based because you're with the North American Dogman Project, right? One of the top dogs there.
Kind words. I appreciate that. I am more or less just a journalist. And like you said, I dive into a lot of creative aspects. And I do have a science team that is obviously with the North American Dogman Project, but I'm really good friends with all of them. And I try to just learn as much as possible and make sure before I speak and before I really try to, I don't know, form any sort of quality theory on any topic, that I speak to my science team and shout out to them and shout out to the NADP, Jessica Jones, Andrew, Chris, Cryptid Warfare, just all y'all guys, everyone that's great out there. I wish I could remember everybody that's linked in with the Midnight Society, but y'all know who you are, and I appreciate everybody.
Well, we've been having fun on Sunday nights with, the short half-hour stuff. Now we get to actually go live on a larger network and have a little more fun with some stories that are, just perfect before you put your head down on your pillow. And I know you've got a couple. How did you get into Dogman though? Before we get into the main stuff tonight, what got you?
Long story short is in high school, I really wish I had the intuition to learn and seep up knowledge like I do now, but I didn't. I was just kind of more of a little punk jock, just didn't want to do my homework, and I wish I could reverse that, but the past is the past. So now I just learn as much as possible. But I used to get my passbook signed when I really should have been doing my homework down in the library. But I would go down, and one of my family friends, he was a librarian, but also did some other technical stuff. And she had a computer that actually accessed, well, a few computers that you were supposed to be taking tests on that would access the internet and such. And she knew that I thought cryptids and things were cool because I would obviously always be trying to check out the dinosaur books, the cryptid books. And when I was 11, I remember my real dad had this VHS that there was a depiction of what this species of dinosaur could have looked like if there was no human encroachment. And it was this crazy looking hominoid thing that always gave me nightmare fuel. And also, I believe it's been debunked now, but there was a supposed plesiosaur fin on an old school VHS on that same one. So every time I'd go see my dad, like every, I don't know, month or so, because he lived a distance away, and you know how that rolled. My parents didn't really like each other. I would always watch stuff like that. So fast forward to when I was supposed to be in school. Yeah, no, I was just down in that back room looking up Jody Cook stuff on the North American Dogman Project. I was watching Monster Quest. I was reading Linda Godfrey's stuff. So if I had to pick three people to really give credit to a lot of the stuff I've learned and just getting my intuition cranking with it, it'd be, of course, Jody Cook, because he's one of my best friends. And honestly, that was the first dude, because I didn't know who had made Monster Quest at the time. And I've actually had a chance to talk to Doug Hychak now. So he would be obviously another person given credit for it, because I was watching Monster Quest when I saw Jody, I believe on an episode of Ohio, where they had found a baboon skull where it had been blasted in the back of the head. And it was literally in the middle of nowhere. So then through there, if I had to pick a number two, rest in peace, Linda Godfrey, straight up, like she's the go-to, her and Jody. And then, like I said, Doug Hychak, because he was pumping out Monster Quest. And those were my three go-tos right there. So pretty much ever since then, I've been super intrigued by it. I've seen all the Monster Quests. I find myself sometimes still throwing them on in the background, either before I'm going to bed or while I'm editing, just to keep on nerding out.
Yeah, so you're soaking up Dogman on Monster Quest, and I'm soaking up Bigfoot and giant fish at the same time while they're
Dwarf, my dude, thanks for stopping in, brother.
oh, the brown dwarf. Welcome everybody. So that got you interested. How did you actually start getting
to where I am right now, more or less. I actually made a post because I was intrigued by it, and I can't even remember. I think it might have been, it was a group that Shane Michael Crisp actually ran, and he's one of my best friends too. He's a little caught up doing some, sheriff stuff these days and such, but I still get a chance to talk to him all the time. But it was a group that he ran, and I just wanted to know what the heck happened to like the North American Dogman Project and what was going on. So this was way before I got a chance to, like I said, to be in with them or chill with Jody or anything like that. But I made a post about the Palmyra Dogmen and just some other stuff up here that I had a chance to, poke around in and visit areas, etc. And I just made a long post just basically asking people's thoughts on it or what was good with the North American Dogman Project. And then Shane reached out to me. He's like, dude, that was some good stuff. And him and I just started, shooting the crap or whatever. And then he was like, man, you got like a ton of information on this. Would you like to come on board with us and just be a member of the main state team? And I was like, yeah, of course. So then from there, I got a chance to link up with Jody. And from there, I started working on the website and such. And then fast forward, now I represent the state of Maine. And just literally last month, I was down in Salem chilling with Jody at the witch trials. So it's good stuff, man.
And how long have you been doing it? I mean, we know since high school, but when did you get into the groups and when did you officially start accumulating?
So I would say it's about a year now that I've been rolling with the North American Dogman Project. And I would say I've been rolling on my YouTube page, oh man, since like 2011. I used to have a lot of my acting stuff up there and modeling stuff. And then about 4 or 5 months ago, I was up for monetization, but I had some mixed stuff on my page. Like I had some humorous commercials like Jack Link's beef jerky, what's his name? Dr. Rick from Progressive, Sam Adams, your cousin from Boston, whatever. Just mixed in with some of my other stuff. And YouTube's like, nah, we're not about that life. You have to have altered those. So those 4 humorous videos were legit, like pulling in some big time numbers. So YouTube's like, we're not monetizing you off of that, you bozo. You didn't do anything except just put them together like funny wise. So I had to remove all those and really just focus on Midnight Lycanthropy now. And I've been doing that for, I would say, about 4.5 months now with a rebrand, give or take a little bit. And I'm a little under halfway there for my views to be back up for monetization. So yeah, I'd say about hardcore now, half a year I've been grinding on my Midnight Lycanthropy, but I've been in with the NADP for about a year now.
I mean, that's a pretty amazing climb. And the fact that you went from some modeling and acting, how did, and then just jump into Dogman,
So how that all kind of unfolded too, long story short is, I mean, growing up, I have a little bit of an autobiography I put out there on my channel, but since you asked, and I mean, people are listening, I pretty much grew up in the hood. I mean, my parents at first tried to obviously be decent quality parents, but I was super young, so I don't fully remember this, but my late grandmother remembered and told me that I basically had to be like taken from my mom when I was like 4 or 5 because she was just like so screwed up, like partying and stuff and like drinking all the time. So I do vaguely remember being down in Florida with my grandparents. And actually, on a humorous note, there's a picture of all these crazy alligator footprints out back of where we used to stay in this condo. And my grandparents used to always walk all down by the water down there. But either way, that I don't really remember that aspect, but I do remember when I started, I always wanted to play hockey, but again, my parents were pretty poor. So they're like, no, you can play soccer, baseball, or basketball. And I'm like, but I'm not about any of those. I like hockey and I like football. They're like, no, too bad. So I ended up, just playing soccer and such. And we traveled around all the time, but I never really wanted to do that. My parents pretty much just like forced me to play soccer all the time. And I've always just been super creative, man, ever since I was younger. Great imagination and just an artist. When I was super little, I drew a picture. It's awful, but apparently the school thought it was good enough to put it up on their wall of these flowers. It's abysmal. But I mean, I even look at some of the other kids. I'm like, yo, that's a cool looking goldfish. My flower stinks, but y'all chose that. Okay. So it's always been in me to be like that. But then obviously when you hit high school and stuff, I mean, I've always, like I said, like to be unique, man. And I thought Jeff Hardy was super cool, and I thought rock stars were always super cool. So I always put that in with my style. I mean, I used to be preppy-ish kind of, because that's the way everyone made fun of you if you weren't. So I tried to be ish, but I also always was kind of skater, like rock star a little bit. So all the rich people in our school and our community was like, yo, that dude's like super weird. But then all those other dudes that weren't about like sports and stuff didn't really like me either, because I was like a all-star soccer player. So I was kind of like a tweener and never really felt like I fit in. And I could have cared less about like soccer. I was just playing it. And then I got hurt my senior year, and I had a chance to get like basically a full boat scholarship to West Virginia to play goalie, and I just wasn't about that stuff anymore. And some girl I was dating was a regional manager for Abercrombie and Fitch at the time, and she was like, yo, I'm going to get you in. They're doing this thing where they want people to stand at the front of the store and basically be a twerp with no shirt on and just greet people. And me coming from the environment I was never really like around that type of stuff. So I always felt like I needed to prove to myself, because I was poor, that I could be just as cool as the cool kids, and like, yo, I'll be my own captain of the cool kids. So I took that opportunity. And then from there, I got into like acting, and I was in a film with Anna Faris and such, but I didn't really like the person I was becoming. I mean, I didn't like a lot of the individuals, not at the time. I mean, I was chilling with them, but all we used to do is party, man, film all night, repeat. And I don't know, just a lot of not caring about things that should really matter in the existence of just life in general. So when I was caught up all in that, I mean, I had a ton of great opportunities. Like I said, I mean, I was chilling with beautiful women all the time, had all kinds of money, man, and such, but didn't really matter because I was super lost. I didn't necessarily really even know what my purpose was. I knew I had like some sort of purpose, because I've always felt like I had a bigger meaning in life. Can't really explain it. Just like I'm supposed to do something like super awesome. But then my mom started getting like super, super sick, meaning because she drank herself to like a abysmal aspects. So I came up from Massachusetts to here in Maine to like try to help her out. And I was staying with one of my friends and her boyfriend in Yarmouth. We had a pretty nice place, but I had to basically like choose to try to stay with my mom, because she was having like seizures and stuff all the time, and she wouldn't like necessarily get help. Man, rest in peace, mom. I love you. But she was insane, dude. She would like be the one to call you from like the hospital and be like, yo, come get me. I'm going to be at the side door. I'm like, what? You're supposed to be in your damn room, man. No wonder the nurse is calling, being like, hey, have you spoke to your mother? I'm like, yeah, she's apparently down on the first floor by the side door trying to escape. So I ended up staying with her, and then I hurt myself. And through hurting myself, I wasn't really able to properly like travel and such. And I also ended up getting fired from like my modeling gig with Abercrombie and Fitch, because I was late all the time, because I couldn't leave my mom by herself because she was like having seizures, but I had to like work and stuff. So I ended up getting like canned from that. And then my girlfriend down in Boston, obviously I couldn't do the things I was doing before, like travel and like film with her and stuff. So she ended up like rolling with like one of my sidekicks at the point in time, which whatever, man. When that all unfolded, me at that point in time, oh, dude, I was super flaming. But me fast forward now, like 8, 10 years later, super chill. I could care less, dude. But I just really got a rude awakening, that I was doing something that had no meaning and wasn't really going to get me to like where I wanted to be. And excuse me. So while I was hurt, because I never really knew how I screwed myself up at this point in time just from playing soccer and weightlifting wrong. But I was having to work at the Olive Garden, man. So just trying to serve and pick up side shifts. And while I was there, I ended up spraining my knee, not from the Olive Garden, but just in general. And I still had to work on a sprained knee. So I ended up screwing my other knee up because I had to pick up heavy trays all the time.
Yeah.
And then I had to try to go to physical therapy to pay for that while I was still working. And that's when they found out that I like crushed my collarbone. I don't know if it was from carrying too many heavy trays or from when I played sports. But after that, I had to go in and get my like collarbone reconstructed. And then they had to remove like a huge blood clot under my arm. It wasn't from like bad health because I'm super healthy. I eat well. That's the only reason they were able to really do this surgery. But it was from my collarbone being crushed down. And I wasn't really able to like do anything with my arm because it swelled up like Shrek. So after they like hit me up with all these like crazy blood thinners, I mean, I'm only like 6'1", dude, like 158, 168-ish, man, at best. And I had to like inject myself with like these freaking little like super blood thinners because, like I said, I was healthy enough to do it. So they blasted all that out. And I was up in there for 3 days and then had to go in like a week later. So after all of that, man, I was definitely in a terrible spot mentally because, dude, there was point in times I couldn't even get up out of like my own bed and stuff, dude, because of how bad I'd like screwed my knee and my back up. So I had a terrible mind frame and I was pissed off all the time. And when you put out that type of like negativity and that type of vibe and you're around those people and people that don't care, you just don't have substance. But as soon as I started like pulling myself away from that and meditating, dude, and spending time with things that matter, spending time with like nature, man, going out of my way to like try to help people, be a good person, you know, work with quality people, hang out with people that have great mind frames. So now that I like do all those things, it really let me realize that I needed to do stuff with my creative aspect. So yeah, I can like jog now, man, and I can like live a pretty pain-free life. But if I don't take care of myself, like foam rolling and do my rehab and stuff, I'll end up screwing my knee up for a little bit. Or if I sit too long, man, like when I was at the Bruins game like last month with my brother, dude, I was screwed up for about a week after with my pelvis. It just didn't feel right until I was able to fix it. And that's fine, man, whatever. But I can use my brain and I would love being creative. So I was like, dude, making content on YouTube is amazing. I have watched so many music videos throughout my life. I've spent so much time on set with acting and modeling, being behind scenes, editing stuff. I love the final products of things. I don't like the whole filming aspect because it takes away the creative part. You realize, oh, wow, that scene is just a half of a house. There's nothing there more than that. But I love how in, say, music videos or movies, like the effects you can add. So I was like, well, wait a second. I want to create content. And now I'm given an opportunity through Jody and others to help figure out what's going on with missing people. So not only am I able to now be creative and use my artistic aspects and the stuff that my friends create for me, I'm able to do something good and help people out. And it just really meshed into such a great opportunity because being a journalist doesn't mean you have to just cover one topic forever, but it does mean that you need to follow through with what you're doing until you can move on to something else. So that would be my best answer for you, man.
Yeah, and it sounds like you and I traveled a similar path in the fact that being a caregiver changes you.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of a selfish kid growing up too, but even into my 30s, but once Elaine and I got together, being a caregiver really made me want to help people even more. So we got a question for you.
I did see that about the Dogman encounter. Yes. I actually have not had any sort of paranormal encounters at all, my friend. I have had a few encounters with deranged human beings that never, fortunately for me, panned out in anything bad. But no, when it comes to paranormal stuff, UFOs, anything like that, I've had no experiences at all. I just know as a journalist, There have been really strange sightings since 290 BC with like the Thynocephali and such, and you have people missing in cave systems, in national forests, and we have unknown tracks that our science team can't verify, and we have prehistoric and modern day animals that fit into a lot of the sightings. So as a journalist, I have to step back and be like, all right, well, I'm very scientific minded, yet once you filter out stuff and put it into the right spots, you're like, okay, there's definitely something occurring out there, and why is it occurring? So that's what I'm trying to figure out right now. And, like I said, have the science team and have people be able to cover every asset or every aspect of the corners.
Yeah, and the really cool thing is, I mean, you're not just looking at the data, you're analyzing it yourself, and you actually got a theory that's kind of gaining traction in the dogman world, right? About what they are.
I appreciate you, my friend. And it's definitely something that my science team and all of us, came up with. And I like to give everyone in my crew credit for anything. I mean, the hypothesis definitely starts with great minds and then turns into theories. So every time, say I potentially send something to Colleen, I mean, she's our environmentalist, or Kyle, or a biologist, or Dennis, or a cult historian, or William, our geologist. I mean, the list can go on. Ryan Tremblay, our our Wendigo specialist. I mean, dude, we have a ton of people. So yes, it's beautiful, man, to be able to have individuals that just specialize in what it is that's occurring, and I can send these people information and really be able to learn and not. All right, it's okay to be, even myself, man. I don't have credentials, dude. So at the end of the day, if someone wants to, troll, I'm just a backyard researcher. If that's really what they want to say, I'm a journalist. I can prove that. But I mean, I don't have scientific backing. I can tell you what my science team says. Yeah, that's not how the scientific community rolls. Okay. How it rolls is you have scientists that are on your side that can speak to the other scientists and then get them on your side, and then they talk to you. So you got to make sure to be able to just present a quality topic before you expect individuals to be able to speak to you. So yeah, it's just all of us, man. It's every great mind and every great host that comes on. I mean, I just love to learn, dude. So the more people that can present things and try to figure out where they plug in, it's really super beneficial. So I'm just thankful for all that.
Well, and to kind of lead into some of these bedtime stories we're going to talk about, do you want to tell people what that theory is about the dogman? What they are?
I mean, sure, I can, or you can, my friend. I mean, I've done a lot of talking. If you'd like to roll it out there.
You're the one that can explain it the best as far as the hyena part. So the whole
Yeah.
history of it, and
Yeah, so before we start talking about a really interesting topic tonight, because to anyone out there that does want to hear about the Dogman all the time, that's what I do cover on Star Fox Radio. Yeah, here we're definitely going to venture out into some other things. But as I said, anyone that wants to just hear about all that and all the research we do, that's honestly what I focus on Midnight Lycanthropy and Star Fox Radio. But yeah, long story short is we are pretty optimistic that there are numerous prehistoric animals that only went extinct 10,000, 11,000, 12,000 years ago that classify into a lot of the encounters and also what people could be seeing. I mean, for example, just to name some of them, you have dire wolves, you have the Dinopithecus, which is an enormous baboon that looks like a crazy baboon werewolf. You have the short-faced cave bear, you have cave hyenas, you have spotted hyenas, which are still in existence right now. And you also have, when you look back in the past now, people don't realize that there were things called bear dogs. Super cool, okay? The amphicenodoids. And one of them, the amphicenodidae, is believed to be bipedal and quadrupedal by scientists, meaning its hips looked like it would have no problem going back and forth, which is how myself and a lot of the people here at the North American Dogman Project believe that they run. Picture more or less kind of how a bear or a baboon's running, but they can use that momentum to push themselves up. And then they did have the capability, like a large ground sloth, to be able to walk upright, which is super interesting. And people don't realize with hyenas, they almost have like a opposable thumb kind of. It's not as advanced as like raccoons and squirrels and such, but it's not as useless as a canine paw is, meaning, yeah, dogs are super cool, but look at a dog's paw. It's pretty much almost useless. They can't pick things up when they try to use it. It's almost like a brute kind of like slap with it. Whereas a cat's got so much dexterity in their paw. And now look at like raccoons and squirrels and chipmunks and anything with hands. It just brings it to a whole new level, you know, of what you can do with those. So hyenas are strange like that. And the cave hyena has a mane, which is super interesting. And it's not a feline nor a canine. And it is depicted as either or. If someone sees it, they could think it looked like a large lion with a mane, especially if someone's not familiarized with it. And in the late 1800s, there is what looked the ringed oak is. It looks like it's either a cave hyena or a dire wolf. I mean, it's definitely no known animal that they ended up shooting and unaliving. So yeah, we definitely believe that hyenas are playing a massive part in this, because in Saudi Arabia recently, the Smithsonian found a large chamber of bones that were majority humans, but also animal bones that were recently preyed upon and pulled into this large chamber in the caves that they had fallen upon by mistake. And it was signs of hyena predation. Okay, so what are hyenas doing in Saudi Arabia? And the only type of hyenas that do that type of behavior are spotted hyenas, which are pack oriented. Striped hyenas and other variants of hyenas are more scavenger based. They wouldn't pull their prey back into caves like that. That's what spotted hyenas like to do, pull it back into their burrows, into caves and such. So yeah, there's just a really high probability that they're kicking around still. And I mean, we have tracks that look like hyena tracks, and to the untrained eye, they would look like bear tracks. We have baboon tracks, and then we have unknown, what looks to be basically like my foot, your foot, but with claws on the front and back in numerous different areas across the United States. So it's, yeah, there's a lot going on right there too. But that's another thing with the hyena as well, is that their back paws and quote unquote front paws are different sizes as well.
Yeah, so see anything dog man, definitely go check Kenny out and all his videos and everything, because we are going to have a little fun. We are going to have some definitely different than Bigfoot and Dogman stuff, because you brought up a topic earlier that I had never heard of, and I went Bigfooting a little earlier and had a whole bunch of experiences. So I ran about 2 hours later than I was hoping. But so there's apparently this Oklahoma Octopus.
Yes,
What
that is
talking about here for some bedtime stories?
right. That is definitely some good stuff for stories for bedtime for sure, man. And the thing with the Oklahoma octopus, it really ties into a bunch of different aspects. And the first thing I'll touch on is with the missing people all across the United States or even globally. Think, I mean, if you went down to take a swim or something, that could be a big reason why no one finds you at your campground, because something did pull you underwater. And all across the world and areas, there are enormous catfish. Okay, like the Wells catfish, for example, is believed to have been responsible for a ton of quote unquote monster sightings and people being consumed in medieval times. And also Jeremy Wade, he's awesome. River Monsters, great show. If anyone ever has had a chance to check that out, that guy pulls out some of the gnarliest living fish monsters you'll ever see. Okay, he has caught some absolutely enormous catfish that would have no problem consuming people. And recently a catfish did wash up with the body stuck inside of it, but the legs of a teenager were still stuck outside because the catfish choked on it and wasn't fully able to finish swallowing the body. So it's a very common thing for that to be occurring. And now octopuses are super strange when it comes to any animal. The closest thing you're going to get to them is a squid. Squid are definitely smart and pretty intriguing themselves, but a squid has no anything on an octopus is when it comes to intelligence. Okay, the octopus is probably, arguably, the smartest sea animal out there. Octopuses are so different even to the squid. They've been known to decorate their caves and dwellings with cool little trinkets like bottle caps and the shells of things they've consumed, almost kind of like something from the movie The Predator. Okay, and they have been able to, they can squeeze their body into almost anything as long as their beak can go through it. And they've been seen and recorded being able to figure out how to get into things and open doors, all kinds of gnarly things, basically solve like puzzles. So octopus are just a whole nother breed of awesomeness, but it's terrifying. And a lot of cool people have a theory that at a point in time, while things were evolving and such, that a meteorite, because it's quite common for meteorites to hit Earth, well, one happened to having some sort of interaction with octopus, and it caused them to really evolve on a whole different level compared to, like I said, other animals. They're so unique, okay? And now picture, like I said, one being in fresh water, because there really is no reason for it not to be able to adapt in fresh water. And the reason I say that is you have fish right now that can do that. I mean, you have bull sharks. Bull sharks, people don't realize the juveniles love freshwater and brackish water, but as they get older, the adults can tolerate brackish water, but they really prefer the full salt water because it dehydrates the heck out of them. But like I said, when they're younger, they are very capable of being in the fresh water. And salmon, for example, too, go back and forth. And I mean, it's odd though, at the end of that cycle, they usually just sit there and rot away. So I don't know if that's because of that or just the stress of everything. But again, you have the Lauren Donaldson project with Dr. Bear, where they created a trout that could live in cold water, warm water, salt water, fresh water. So it's really not too hard to think that some sort of cephalopod or an octopus could be in fresh water, okay? Especially in a lot of these areas where they're super deep lakes or they were formed by glaciers. And yeah, man, not just in Oklahoma, but in a ton of freshwater lakes that are apparently super deep and old. People report seeing what seems and looks to be a 20 to 30-foot octopus with that's the whole entire length of its tentacles, including its body. And yeah, it's really interesting. There's a lot of people that just go missing on their boats and such. And sure, there could be, again, things that are also involved. People could be drowning and, the bodies haven't been found. Sure, we got to look at it just like we look at everything else. But it is really interesting because it's one of those things that we know octopuses exist. So it's not like we're dealing with a cryptid, but now it's a cryptid because I guess octopuses are specifically living in fresh water. So that's the cryptid aspect of it. But again, people are missing and people go missing all the time. And it's just another aspect, I think, that falls into where people could be going.
Well, you mentioned the bull shark, and there's actually a recorded case back in the 30s where there was a shark bite. They didn't actually catch the shark, but in Lake Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Before they put that electric fence in, and it was only like 20 miles from where I eventually lived. I obviously wasn't born back then. Otherwise, I'd be like one of the immortals from Highlander. But so
yeah, that's super interesting.
So they're actually, when we talk about Oklahoma octopus, and what's the history? People are actually seeing them in Oklahoma, because I'm sorry I didn't look. So
no, you're good. So, like I said, they've been seen in different areas, but the exact time frame for the very first Oklahoma octopus sighting is, let me take a look for you, man. So supposedly it's in these different lakes: Lake Thunderbird, Lake Ten Killer, and then Lake Oleg. Oh man, I butchered that. And trying to think, like, yeah, it's pretty much just saying what everything I just told you about. It attacks unknown people. Man, yeah, there's not really a first time sighting. Hold on a second. It's one of those things I feel like that hasn't really, no one's really documented it. I mean, people know about it and have spoken about it, but I feel like it's one of those things that is passed down verbally, I guess. I mean, I heard about this back when I was in high school. So, I mean, it's been going around for a minute, but the only stuff I'm really finding out is they were just saying in the early 2000s, it started kind of floating around that people were seeing this or supposedly having encounters with this. But again, I would assume it's probably just when it kind of took mainstream and people started documenting it. I don't know. I mean, I would love to have some sort of indigenous individual make some comment about that, because in indigenous cultures they know a ton, and I would love to hear any awesome take like that to see if there's any sort of lore that goes with it, or if it's just something that seems to be more of a modern day creation.
Oh, like what do they call them? Creepypasta?
I mean, yes, I guess, but I think there's truth here to an extent, because, like I said, I don't see why an octopus couldn't live in fresh water. So I think there must be some sort of meritable individuals to have seen it, to have anyone in the scientific community have brought it up, but it's not something that is heavily documented. But I mean, I don't think that's really an issue, because I mean, the dog man is heavily documented and there's so much hot garbage. Like, I was just on YouTube earlier, the Michigan dog man is real. And this popped out and it's a trail cam shot. No, dude, it was awful, man. It's so fake, dude. And you had like 65,000 views already or something like that in like a day and a half.
Oh,
It's
man.
just the way it is. But again, like I said, people want to gather that all up, and there's really no sort of quality visual evidence for that. There's a lot of historical stuff, but again,
Well,
I haven't had a chance to speak to any of the indigenous cultures about that, because, to be quite honest with you, they probably have stories about that that just haven't been documented, man. Just like a lot of their dogman stuff has only been recently documented, because, like Nuxium, Brother Nature says, a lot of the stuff is oral based, and they like to keep it like that because they've been burned in the past, meaning when people have written it down, they end up depicting it not in the way that it was supposed to be depicted, and then a stereotype is then preceded with the indigenous culture. So they very much like to keep things oral based. So that's why I was saying it would be beautiful to be able to sit down with somebody that would be based in the indigenous cultures around those areas to see if they have any stories about that.
Because the more you think about it, the harder it would be to track, because it's not something like a Loch Ness monster or like what's his name, Charlie or Okeechobee or whatever his name is, because
Yes.
they come up for air. They attach themselves to a ship, float into the Great Lakes, and live a happy life below the sea. Nobody sees them unless they happen to step on one.
And also, too, here's a really interesting thing. I would like to remind me if I forget, if I get off on a tangent about the first thing, but I would like to bring some clarity to Nessie as well. But people, the thing with the Kraken and octopus and such, they don't realize now, sure, with a modern day boat and such that's made out of metal, okay, it's a lot different. But older boats, okay, that were made out of wood, picture how heavy a giant squid or a giant octopus is, okay? Now picture the pressure of the ocean, of something coming up and then wrapping its own weight around this wooden boat and then pulling it down with the now pressure of the ocean. The reason I say that is when a boat sinks, okay? That's what happens, unfortunately, to a ton of people in boat wrecks. They get yanked down with the pressure as to what's occurring. Like, unfortunately, the people in the Titanic that jumped out and such, there was so much of an under pull from that boat going down and displacing all that water, sucked you up just like a tube. Okay. So, yeah, a giant squid or octopus is not the size of a Titanic. But what I'm trying to say is wood is pretty weak when it gets wet, and especially, numerous times it's been used for trips over and over again. And yes, if a giant squid or octopus came up and wrapped its tentacles around the middle of the boat, thinking it was a sperm whale, because they do have documents that sperm whales most likely are winning the battles, but battle with large squid all the time, which is why they have scars all over their face from the sucker marks, basically pock marks. So it would easily, yes, break the boat with its weight. So now back to, I guess, what I would like to say about the Loch Ness Monster is, for some reason, people still love that. And it's okay to love something that's not real, but it's had so much negative stigmata, meaning every image has been debunked and proven to be a hoax, from the surgeon to everything else. And it's in an area that it's impossible to feed something like that. And you need a breeding population. There can't just be one Nessie floating around, because if there was, it would no longer exist after its time frame. That's like the last crocodile. If there's just one floating around, after it no longer exists, it's just gone. Okay. And Loch Ness doesn't really have plentiful food sources or something like that. And now, to dig a little bit more into it, on top of every single image being a hoax, water does weird things. Okay. Logs do weird things when they're floating through the water. When boats are no longer around, the wakes cause weird things. And also, Forrest Galante, yes, shout out to him. He's the man. He's one of my favorite biologists and scientific minds ever. Made some very beautiful, valid points. There are giant eels in Loch Ness that look serpentine, that would come up to the surface sometimes, and they are scary as heck and are jet black and would cause that snake-like looking appendage. Also, seals and sea lions go in there sometimes, which again would cause strange sightings, and especially if they're in a pack and jumping in and out of the water. And also, here's the best one. It's humorous because of the way I need to explain it, but okay. Young males in whales that are getting ready to reproduce and, become big boys in life, well, what happens to any male, okay, as you're finding yourself, correct? So when so when these whales are getting ready to, like I said, reproduce, they come in and they get erections, okay? And anyone can look at this, and Forrest Galante shows a great image of it, but they turn upside down. And when their erection comes out, dude, it literally looks like the head of a Loch Ness monster. It's a long, huge, I guess your red rocket for your dog. It's so weird to say, but we're talking science here. It's real. It's reproduction, whatever. So anyone can look that up as well. But all those right there are just so much great clarity as to why the Loch Ness Monster has no merit. So, moral, the why I brought that up too is octopuses actually exist. Yes, we know plesiosaurs exist in the past, but you need things to, like I said, reproduce. Octopuses exist now, and all those lakes are old lakes and have a ton of food sources and such. So, even though it hasn't been heavily documented, there's way more credence from the get-go for the fact of the Oklahoma octopus to be a thing than Loch Ness, but everyone still thinks Loch Ness is a thing, and it really isn't, though.
Yeah, that's always the sketchy one, because you get people who say they can see them crawl across the land and stuff like that, but what do you do with it? So
Yeah.
what? Now we had another one you wanted to talk about. giant spiders, right? That'd be something to think about as you're closing your eyes and knowing that the average person swallows 10 a year.
Yeah, so as we're kind of tying this up a little bit, don't get me wrong though, even though I'm super scientific based, I love to learn, okay? So if I was able to sit down with people that have great minds and they could bring credence to the Loch Ness Monster, I'm not saying I wouldn't change my perspective on it at all. I'm just saying at the moment in time that we sit from here, from all the scientific things and all the hoaxes I've seen and all the people admitting to hoaxes, and just like I said, everything we just spoke about, I just don't think there's enough evidence to support the Loch Ness Monster existing. Whereas everything at the beginning we spoke about with the Dogman, with the footprints, the vocalizations, and all that stuff, the historical aspects, there's so much evidence for it. So if we're ever going to like talk about things like that, people just really need to be able to look at the scientific sides of things, okay? Meaning, for example, like UFOs, okay? This is just my thoughts. There's no way the whole entire universe were the best that could be created, okay? Of course, there's extraterrestrial life out there. What would be the whole point of the solar systems on top of solar systems on top of galaxies like that? I don't like to deal in hundreds or in impossibles, but to me, that is 99.9% nearly impossible that there's not extraterrestrial life.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to a comment just because this one strikes
Yes,
me.
Barb, please do.
She's talking a little twist. She wants Elon Musk to build a vehicle to go deep underwater. I hope he needs more money than they did going to the Titanic with a Pepsi can and a PlayStation controller. So,
Oh man, yeah, dude. That's another great thing too to, kind of tie and touch base on is you can be a brilliant mind, but just still kind of be narcissistic and meaning that you don't take in outside information, okay? So that guy was a genius. He was, but he was narcissistic enough to think that he could do something even though other people that are extremely intellectual at the topic were advising him not to, okay? And that's why I always try to tell people it's okay for someone to be like, hey, so and so is an expert. But for that individual to be like, hey, I'm an expert, I don't feel like that's a good way to approach things, because anytime somebody comes right out and just tells me they're immediately an expert, I don't completely finish my opinion in my side of my head about them, but that to me usually solidifies that somebody is closing their mind off on something. And even if you are the greatest scientist in the world, you should always want to learn more and seep in information and pull in more information. So that's what I always try to do, man. I mean, there's obviously a tactful way to tell somebody if they're incorrect, and obviously, if someone's trolling, sure, it's a different way. But I love to be corrected. I love to be informed about things, because without knowledge, there is nothing. And one of the best things I like to tell people is if you want to understand your mind, you observe it. Okay. And if you want to understand a topic, you observe it. Some of the most important and beneficial information I've ever learned was not from speaking, it was from listening. And again, you just need to ask yourself, do you control your mind or does somebody else own your mind?
and great point. I think that's why you and I get along so well, because we both love to listen and we know there's more to learn about the topic. You know,
Yes.
so
And that's
there's
brilliant.
that's all there is. There's always going to be something coming out that maybe is new twist, new behavior. So
Yes. And the spider thing, real quick, I'll touch base with you on, brother. So, again, if I ever do feel like I bring clarity to the Dogman topic and I'm really able to get it in good hands, and then I would definitely be interested in looking into the Jubah Fofi, because spiders in general are super interesting. And a lot of people are so afraid of spiders. And it goes back to just primitive fear of things, because there were points in times, highly probably, that we dealt with large spiders that would, well, cause a lot of trauma to us. And still to this day, in the Amazon and other remote areas, tribal individuals, keep in mind, they spend their whole entire life in the rainforest in these areas. So I do believe they understand what it is that they're seeing, okay? Because they can describe to you other spiders, tarantulas, and such, and tell you this is not what they saw. Well, there's this spider species that is believed to basically be as big as the top of a garbage can, man, more or less. And that's not really including its leg span. And it's called the jabaphofi. And it's believed to be extremely toxic. And these natives speak about how this jabaphofi is very hard to find nowadays because of the encroachment on the rainforest and such, and also because they tried to eradicate them. But they set up basically like a burrow spider underneath these massive trees in the rainforest, and they will put their spider webs all across. And these indigenous cultures speak of them preying on small antelope, birds, and even humans. And what they would do is catch you in these nets and then come out and hit you with their venom. So there's actually a lot of credence to this now, though, because these indigenous cultures build their huts to be spider proof, because they say that they come and take their goats as well as their pets at night and such, and their children. And they are extremely terrified of these arachnids. Well, you have an ancient depiction of these large spiders in this area too, which brings a little bit more credence. But in the 1900s, at some point, you had some, well, rich guy that decided wanted to be an explorer. So him and his wife were driving their car down these remote trails and came across at first what they thought was an ape of some sort crawling across the road. But they soon realized it was a giant spider, and it reared itself up at their car and began hissing loudly, they said. So they did not want to proceed. They ended up backing up and leaving. Well, you also have another documented case of these people that were exploring that, well, none of them came back except for one guy that was poisoned by some sort of toxin that the tribal members said was the jabaphofi, and they were unable to help him because it's apparently 100% lethal. And this guy had explained that him and his explorers came across this strange webbing and got stuck in it. And immediately these large spiders came out and bit his fellow companions, and they immediately started vomiting and having seizures, and they started to come after him, and he was able to shoot them with his revolver, but he took a bite on his leg and such, but somehow had managed his way back to the village, and that's when he became deceased from this toxin. And you now have other depictions of soldiers in Vietnam, American soldiers, that same thing, came across these large arachnids that they lit them up, and they were able to dispose of a lot of them, but it took a ton of firepower because of how fast they were and such. And same thing, you have another case though of soldiers in the Amazon, just like in the Vietnam case, speaking about having to fend these arachnids off, and a couple of them being consumed and pulled away. So there's a couple different theories because, you know, with the way the world's set up right now at this point in time, it's really hard for a spider supposedly to reach this point in size. They say the Goliath bird-eating spider, yeah, flamethrower, right, is the largest a spider can grow because of how much its ectoskeleton would weigh, and it would no longer be able to be agile, because tarantulas are agile enough, but they are not even close to as agile as a jumping spider. Do you see what I'm saying? And if you look at the difference in comparison in size now, it's because a tarantula has a huge ectoskeleton, whereas a jumping spider is super agile and super dexterous, but it doesn't have a huge ectoskeleton. So a lot of scientists are intrigued by this because they think it could maybe be some sort of crustacean like a coconut crab or something, but they don't move that fast though. And in all these depictions, and they don't use webs. And in these depictions, these things are fast. But coconut crabs are creepy as heck and do look like arachnids. And there are a lot of people that think Amelia Earhart was actually consumed by coconut crabs because on the island where she would have potentially have gone down and made refuge on is a huge area for coconut crabs. And they come out at night by the hundreds. And I advise anyone to look them up. They are literally something out of nightmare fuel. They just start ripping you apart and consuming you. But again, that doesn't fall into the aspect of what the soldiers and things said about being venomous, and also what the tribal people say about being dexterous. So it's really interesting. And a lot of people don't know spiders are smart. Okay. You can actually form a bond with a jumping spider as a pet. And if you don't believe me, look it up. There's plenty of documented cases. They recognize you and they are friends with you. Okay. So again, there is some intellect there. And it's just really interesting because there's a ton of credence for the Jabba Bofi. And yeah, it's listed as a cryptid, but large spiders in general do exist. So it's the same thing like the octopus. It's not really like a cryptid, though, because we do have ancestors that are evolved to an extent. But with science, though, like I said, there would be a hard time for a spider the size of what these individuals are speaking of to exist, because their body would literally crush in on themselves. But they're seeing something, and there's these documented cases of it. So it's just another interesting topic for sure, man.
Yeah, definitely. And that sounds like probably a good spot where we'll wrap tonight up.
Yes, no, thank you so much. And a little twisted, that's all I talk about, my friend, on Midnight Lycanthropy. Yes, so if you ever want to hear Dogman stuff, I got it all up on there, but I figured to bring a little bit new spice to what Brian's putting out and such. And it'd just be interesting to talk about a bunch of like different topics here, because I'm one of those people, I just have so much knowledge in my brain that I guess is useless to an extent, if not shared, but knowledge isn't useless. So it's definitely good to be able to just dive into some intriguing stuff for sure.
Well, we're going to get into all of that next week, that's for sure. Well, some of it we'll do week by week, obviously, and have a whole lot of fun doing it. So what Grizzly would normally say, from coast to coast and around the world, thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Thank you, Kenny, for sharing time. Holy crap, that was interesting. That was fun.
No, I appreciate y'all. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for recruiting me. So definitely got a ton of good stuff coming here in the future for sure. And thank you for everybody in the comments. Barb, I look forward to our link up on Thursday. And Brian, I'll be seeing you Sunday. And Dwarf, hit me up soon, man. We got to record some more as well. And thanks, everybody. Just be good people, be kind, try to keep your head on straight, and just remember, much love, everybody. Stay safe out there.
Perfect to end on. Thanks, everybody.